The constitutional historian, Dr. Luke Blaxill, joins us now. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. A lot of people are getting in touch, a lot of our viewers are getting in touch already and saying, why can't he be kicked out of Royal Lodge? Why do we still have to call him Prince Andrew? These things have got to the point where he should just be shunned, maybe even banned. Why can't we do that?
Well, there are always precedents for things changing within the British monarchy. I mean, it was said that Edward VIII couldn't marry a divorcee in Wallis Simpson in 1936. Indeed, we had two divorcees marrying in Charles and Camilla. And so there are no rules as to how monarchy and the civil list can work. In theory, they can be changed. I think the reason why the renouncing of a royal title is a little bit more significant than, say, stopping a sovereign grant, which, has already been removed from Andrew, is because, titles aren't really seen to be things you can just remove. I mean, it's not like, for example, Angela Rayner being sacked as Deputy Prime Minister, Andrew being sacked as Duke of York, because royal titles are supposed to come from something divine. They're something mystic. They are titles that are conferred from nobility, from land, which come with them attendant privileges, sometimes to do with the House of Lords or, sitting in Parliament, etc. And so they're the ancient components of the British class system. And so it would be quite a significant precedent if there were mechanisms by which those things could be removed, but it's not necessarily a wrong thing that there could be.
Yeah, I mean, because for most of us, and I get what you're saying about how there is this divine element to it all, and it's all part of the culture and everything else. But ultimately, these titles were bestowed by the monarch, but the monarch is unable to remove them.
Well, because the monarch isn't something that necessarily has absolute power all the time to remove all titles, and I suppose it's also partly a cultural answer to your question. I mean, when push comes to shove, the monarch could right today ask Keir Starmer to resign as Prime Minister. There are technical powers which the monarchy can use, but operationally does not. In this case, we're not so much talking about stripping a title because, of course, Andrew's actually resigned his titles. He hasn't needed to be stripped of them, although I think the implication presumably was that if he didn't resign them, he would have been stripped of them. And there are a couple of historical precedents, of that happening. And I guess as I'm a historian, I should mention a couple. And when we had Ernest Augustus, who was a duke, and he was stripped by an act of parliament in 1917 for fighting for the Germans in the First World War. Then we have to go back into the medieval period to get other kind of precedents. Murdoch Stewart of Albany, accused of treason by James I and then executed. And so losing titles and having them revoked is something that has been reserved only for traitors, essentially. So Andrew sits in very, very poor company, even though there is, I guess, a technical difference between him giving them up himself and him having them stripped from him.
The one thing that can never be taken away from him, and I suppose quite rightly, is the fact that he was the late Queen's son, and thus he is a prince, whether anyone likes it or not. I wonder, does Sarah Ferguson just go back to being a commoner now?
Yes.
Wow. And Prince Andrew, then, is still in the line for the throne. I think he's something like 7th or something at the moment, isn't he? And goodness only knows, hopefully it would never happen. But one has to remember, if you look back, that Prince Charles, when he was much younger, was involved in a nearly fatal ski accident. If we'd lost Prince Charles, Prince Andrew would be king now. Isn't that
Yes,
right?
there are all sorts of plausible scenarios there. I think, though, if anything, history might help us a little bit more in that case, because, as I say, we have had an abdication in the 20th century in Edward VIII. And the Edward VIII abdication, it was a scandal, but some people were sympathetic to him because obviously he abdicated to marry the woman that he loved. But had Andrew been king presently, of course, this would have been a catastrophic disaster. I think it already is a disaster, but I think that happened already after the Mateless interview. And I think, in a sense, the hit has already been taken from that. But one thing I would say about the monarchy, though, is it is an adaptable institution in the modern age, and things change quickly. You know, we've already had the idea of Prince Harry stepping back from public life as being a prince. The marriage of Charles and Camilla was highly constitutionally irregular. Now we've got another third constitutional happening, which is the renouncing of royal titles by a disgraced duke. Ultimately, the rules do keep changing as more scandals appear, but the Crown has always been able to reinvent itself, and one might argue that's one of the reasons why it's continued to survive.
Okay.
And can I just ask one more? There's so many rumours in the press, and I think it's because William has let it be known that when he is king one day, he is going to downsize the whole business of the monarchy, the royal family. He's going to modernise. Do we have any idea in what sort of way he would do this? Because he seems to be hell-bent on it. He's letting it be known. He looks quite stern when he says it.
Charles also advocated a slimmed-down monarchy, and it's often been speculated about what that might actually mean. I mean, one thing that it might mean is potential stripping of royal titles for bad behaviour, whether that's something William's going to unilaterally decide himself or whether he's going to have some kind of committee. But I think certainly the behaviour of Andrew gives extra ammunition to those kind of modernising reformers that really, as an excessive civil list, especially those who are slightly outside of the public eye and can probably get away, shall we say, with more of an abuse of taxpayer funding, shouldn't really be tolerated. But I think the takeaway is really that if you fall from grace in British public life as an aristocrat, part of the royal family, you can no longer keep your titles and go into quiet retirement, as was the case in the past sometimes where there were scandals. Now, it may well be the case that following this precedent, you also have to renounce your own ceremonial titles, as well as your grant, and effectively go back to being a commoner in many respects, which is, I suppose you could argue, one of the ultimate punishments for a duke.
I suppose so, to be like the rest of us. Luke Blaxill, really good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.